All right, folks. Today we have a very, very special guest here on The Art of Possible, Nishant Sinha, who is the founder of Roastery, which is one of India's fastest growing coffee brands. And I don't think it would be appropriate to say it's one of India's fastest growing coffee brands anymore because they've just opened a new outlet in Scandinavia. So this is a brand that is starting to become an internationally renowned competitor with very, very well known specialty coffee brands and cafes. We're going to dig into how Nishant built Roastery from scratch and just understand what it takes to build a consumer brand like this in today's day and age, especially when you're starting from nothing, right? So Nishant, the one question that we always start our guests on The Art of Possible is, what was your childish dream? And when we say childish, we mean something that, like, when you were growing up, you thought would be very unlikely for you to accomplish, but was something you really wanted to do. So what was it? And was it related to what you're doing right now, or was it not? It would be really great to sort of just dig into the thought process.
First of all, Abhilaksha and Ron, thank you so much for having me here. Really means a lot. And I'm really looking forward to, very great, fun conversation. And when it comes to the question that you've asked me about the childhood dream, when we were growing up, I remember I grew up in a very small town of Bihar. It's called Hajipur. That's where I was born. And I grew up in a joint family. Like, my father was 6 brothers and 2 sisters, like all our cousins. There were 14 sister and then 8 brother. All of us, we used to live together in one big house. So growing up was fun. Obviously, I wanted to be a cricketer. Then, some point of time, I wanted to be a chess player. And then some point of time, I realized that I want to be an IAS, and because, growing up in Bihar, everybody wants to be an IAS and IPS. So that was, dream then. But now, I mean, obviously, when I grew up, I realized that, okay. But, one common connection that I see between the childhood and the adulthood and the age that I'm in right now, I think everything is linked to the curiosity. Because, what I can see that you guys are trying to highlight the childhood dream, because you want to find out the curiosity in the person, right? Because when you're a kid, you're innocent and you try to, do a lot of things without even thinking that, what will happen. Like, you just go out in the ground and then play. You don't even think of becoming Sachin Tendulkar, or you don't even think of becoming Virat Kohli or MS Dhoni. You just go out and play, and then eventually you figure out that, okay, this is what you want to do. So I think you should not leave that part of you. You should not miss that thing. No matter which age you are, that curiosity in your mind. When I was growing up, I was not afraid of anything. So I think you should be fearful. So, if I see what I did, what I dreamed as a kid, it's still helping me out. Though I've not become a cricketer, I've not become a chess player, but I still feel that the leadership skills that, I learned there, the curiosity that I always think very differently from rest of the people who is around me. That curiosity has not gone. And if that goes away, then that's where I think you compromise on your childhood and your adulthood and everything else.
That's very interesting because you're talking about curiosity, and I think you've said it better than anyone. The fact that adults are always a bit ashamed to make, I guess, quote unquote, a fool out of themselves, and that's why they are too afraid of trying new things. Simple example, like if somebody doesn't know how to swim, they're not gonna usually, as an adult, want to learn how to swim because they don't want to swim around like other kids and be like, oh, these kids are pedaling and looking stupid. I don't, as an adult, want to look like these. There's no real logic to that. At the end of the day, you put in a couple of like months of effort and you'll just become a good swimmer. Who are you competing against? It's just yourself. But I think we're just so bad. And that's, I think, also with creating anything. Like whenever you're starting something new and you're creating, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna suck at this, so maybe just not try. So I think you've said it really right, Nishant, like the curiosity bit. So growing up, you had these dreams. You said that you had the curiosity connection that you still held on to. As you grew up, like how did you stay in your hometown, go to school there, go to university there? How was that journey, and what did you pick up along the way?
Until my high school, I stayed in my same hometown that I was born. And I feel I was very blessed because, when you grow up, in a certain part of area and then you spend also a good amount of time over there, I think that those people are very lucky. I went to Kendra Vidyalaya. That was the only English medium school, you could go to. And my parents were like, they're very, very excited about it that, they want the best of the education for me. Obviously, like, I was not good at studies. I failed in 12th standard once. बहुत मुश्किल से, the second time I kind of cleared the exam. And, my parents wanted me to be maybe a doctor or maybe IAS and IPS or maybe an engineer, but I knew that I'm not gonna be in that line because I don't have what it takes to be in that field, and maybe my calling was something else. So I chose a very unorthodox way of studying. I went for a hotel management, and I went to Rajasthan, Jodhpur, to do my hotel management, which was very, very rare in my town. And, you don't think of going for a hotel management course. So that's where I picked up because it was very easy to write. Like I cleared in one go. So I went for hotel management, and it was a very different cultural shock for me. Growing up in Bihar and then going and studying in Rajasthan. But one thing remained same, which was people around me, and then that curiosity that I had in my mind for people around. Let's say if I ask you a question that how's my haircut? If you say it's bad, I'll ask you the reason. Why do you think it's bad? I would like to know more in detail because I have a very curious mind. I won't judge you for saying this that oh this is bad. If you say that this is good, then I'll still ask you the same question. Why do you think it's those things remain same? And I carried a lot of emotions and a lot of the learning from my childhood because growing up in a joint family teaches you a lot to learn a lot of coordination between them. You need to learn a lot of diplomacy between them because sometimes one cousin is hurt with the other cousin and then they just want to sit in front of you and then just do gossip and just want to throw out. And maybe he doesn't want to and she doesn't want to harm anything, but they just want to throw. So you need to understand those minute details. We carried those things, and then I went to college, and then there also like we were batch of 60 people. But in my gang, we were 15 people, and everybody was from different part of life. We have a saying in our coffee industry, to understand the good cup of coffee, you need to taste a lot of bad cup of coffee. So, same with the people, I guess. The more people you meet, the more psychologically and better you become in terms of handling them, in terms of understanding them. And I believe that anything in the world is all about especially the kind of work that we do is all about people handling. Like you make a product once, it's fine. I mean, like let's talk about Steve Jobs. And in his lifetime, he might have made maybe 10 products. In order to make that 10 products super successful, he had to maybe deal with millions of people. So how you deal with people, how you handle them, how you understand their psychology, what they want, what they don't want. The Steve Jobs is the greatest of the guy that came into our generation, and he came and did a lot of things and then went away. But if you look at the reason he could do, because he understood people's psychology, and I think the reason he understood because he had a curious mind, and he spent a lot of time with a lot of people around him trying to understand what they want. And then he was just that he was better than the other people, trying to understand what other wants. And I think that is something that really helped me in terms of coming out of college and then doing things on my own.
So, Nishant, you studied hotel management, right? Between that and starting Roastery, what were the formative years of your early professional life like? What were those pivotal professional experiences for you that got you where you are today?
Oh,
Were they focused on hospitality? Were you in that sector? And what was going through your mind in terms of how you wanted your career to go? So, was there a plan, and like, how did you imagine that path being charted out?
Well, I did a lot of shit things in my life. You are a person, based out of your experience. So I think it's because of that. So after college, like until college, my life was fun. But the reality hits you when you finish your studies and you want to start working. And then what happened with me, suddenly the moment I finished my college, we became a poor class because, of certain bad calls that happened in the businesses in my family and a lot of other things. And then we almost became like a poor class. Like even there was a time when we didn't have somebody comes to your home, you have to, you offer them a tea, like, right? And probably you might not have milk, to offer the tea, if you're poor. But we didn't have sugar only. Imagine the level of poverty that we were in at that point of time, because forget about the milk. Milk, obviously, we could not afford, but we didn't have sugar also. And then, being the eldest in my family, a lot of responsibility came on my shoulder that, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was having a very good and gaga time in my life, and then suddenly I realized, oh shit, now you have to start doing a lot of things because you are the eldest. The only thing in my mind was that I wanted to survive. I wanted to make money so that I can support my family. I always believe that there is a supreme power. There is somebody, I mean, or there is some kind of energy, there's something which is helping you out and which is shaping your career, shaping your future. Like, I read a very interesting line from a movie. It is by the Irfan Khan, and he says a dialogue in that movie. He says, the life is goddamn random. It doesn't make sense at all. But it only, when it crosses certain period, you realize, and when you connect those dots, you realize that it is making a lot of sense. Yeah. So, this happened with me. I mean, though I wanted to make money and I wanted to support my family, but universe has its own way of, conspiring things for you. And one of my professor in the college days, and though I was not good at studies and I was not good at English also, like I could not speak English. I still, I'm trying to learn, but that point of time, my English was very, very bad. and I was in the hospitality where English and personality matters a lot. And I could not clear Oberoi, I could not clear Taj, I could not clear a lot of other campus interviews because my personality was not good. I could not speak good English, though my technical skills were good, though my knowledge was good, but because of the personality, I could not do it. So my professor told me that, Nishant, I think you should join a coffee industry because coffee industry is something that's going to flourish. And he had a vision. He knew that more than the burger chain, more than the pizza chain, the coffee chain is going to go bigger. And that is what he taught. I still take a lot of advice from him. He's in touch with me, and I really treat him, like my inspiration, my guru. I started with Cafe Coffee Day, and that's where the curiosity of coffee came into me. And then I started to explore more. I joined them as a management trainee, started working with them in Delhi, worked there for a year. Then I fell in love with a girl, and then she moved to Hyderabad. I also decided to, move to Hyderabad, so I applied for another job. And that point of time, Lavazza, which is an Italian coffee, they have entered India. And they were looking for a person to join them in Hyderabad. And then I applied to through them and I got it. So that's where the South connection happened. And then I worked with Hindustan Unilever. I worked with Metro Cash and Carry. But touch wood, if you look at everything happened in coffee, like whichever company I joined was into coffee. Obviously, it's a new city, new culture, new space, very different people. The food habits were different, the culture was different, and I struggled a lot. Initially, I struggled a lot. It was like a nightmare. Every night, I used to think that I don't know what am I doing here? Why did I move? And especially after my breakup, it started to hit me more that why did I even move here? When I was working with Metro Cash and Carry, I met a very interesting gentleman. He was my super boss there, and he told me that, Nishant, you have so much of knowledge and so much of curiosity about coffee, so much of inspiration about coffee. I mean, I think you should do something of your own. I mean, you should not be working here because you have. I see there's something in you. And he was my super boss. I mean, though in an office I was not allowed to speak to him, but out of the office he was my best friend. We used to hang out, we used to drink together, we used to party together, and that's where all these conversation used to happen. And then one fine day, I'd ask him that, what if I start something, if I go out of the company in my professional life, I do something and it doesn't work out. Like max to max, what will happen? After a year, you come back to me. He kind of motivated me, and that's where I'm like, okay, let's quit corporate life. And I was making decent by then. And that's where I quit Metro and then start consulting. So what I used to do, I used to take cafes which are not doing well. I used to take them on lease, probably for a couple of months, set the recipe, set the menu, set the staff, do the lot of training, and then kind of convert into a profit center and to the original owners. That's what I used to do, and I used to do it for 6 months project, 3 months project. So I did for a couple of places in Hyderabad, and eventually all those places became quite hit. And then my confidence level shot up even more higher. And then the world was revolving around the specialty coffee, especially a lot of things were happening in America and Australia where you're sitting. And and obviously I was into coffee, I was a consultant, so I kind of gaining knowledge, improving my knowledge, improving my experience, a lot of the things. And then I did consulting for almost 5 6 years, and then I realized that okay, this is the time that I have to launch my own specialty coffee brand. There was no brand in southern part of India at that point of time, and that's where the born of Roastery Coffee House happened.
So, Nishant, as somebody who's been in the caffeinated beverages space for the last 10 years or so, would you say that
More 2 decade, I guess.
10 years or so, would you say that the explosion of coffee in India is a new thing? Because I always got the impression that we're more of a tea drinking population and coffee is more of a recent phenomenon, right? So, your professor, would you say he had like a great deal of foresight when he saw that trend picking up of coffee consumption? And would you say that this is a relatively new evolution in how Indians consume beverages? Or would you say that there was always a lot of opportunity in this space and all that was needed was for someone to come up and just, tap into it and pick it up, right? So I just want to understand your thoughts on that.
See, I think, my professor is right. I mean, like, he was ahead of time and he knew he could see a lot of things. So he was very clear because he saw a global phenomena also. It was just not about India. And he saw that India, the GDP will grow, the Indian population is growing. And obviously, this was the time around 2007, 2008. I think India was getting into that track. Like, China was already big back then. And then India was getting on track. And then, when the population grow, when the GDP grows, you need a sensible drink in your life. Like if you look at before 1400 and 1500 century, not much of revolution, not much of things has happened in the world because water was not safe to drink, and people all the time were drunk because they were drinking wine, the fermented water and things like that. Yeah. After the evolution of coffee and tea, Like after 1400, after 1500, we have so much of invention. We have so much of discovery. People became sane. The culture became quite adoptable, and then everybody became quite sane, quite nice, quite better. The society became better. I think a lot of credit goes to coffee and tea. Honestly, I mean, this is my take on this. You need a drink, you need something which can keep you moving, which can keep you going. And what is happening right now in India is the same, like, because we all are working so hard. Now we don't have the Saturday and Sunday. We don't have the time of like 9 to 6. So we need something which keeps you moving. And I think that is what coffee and tea is doing. Like tea has done a lot to India, but I think this is the time of coffee because people are getting healthier also. They're choosing the healthy options, so they're going for the black coffee. Even though they're going for the milk coffee, they're avoiding sugar. They're drinking a lot of the vegan milk options and things like that. So, and I think India is at a space right now. In the next 10 years, a lot will happen. All of us, people like us, we have a lot of responsibility right now. That how are we going to shape the future of India? Like probably, or at least whatever bit that I can do in my capacity. I think I should do that.
Nishant, I really like the way that you said that we need a sensible drink in our life because I have to say that coffee is probably the thing that keeps me sensible. Because without coffee, like
Yeah, absolutely.
you just can't do it.
Let's admit it. I don't think we can do it without coffee. Whatever we are doing, we need that fuel. Like, I understand that, if you see a lot of Hollywood movies, the founders are drinking beer and then they're coding and things like that. And I don't think they were drinking beer and coding. I think they were, drinking coffee and coding it. Maybe the beer company has funded them to put that, beer bottle on the table, on the desk. But I think you gotta do this with coffee or maybe some kind of hot beverage, not with the alcohol.
And maybe the coffee companies don't need to fund them because they're probably drinking the beer and it's just sitting there. But when they're actually doing their work for a long time, they are on coffee. And as like people who worked in the office like till 12, 1 a.m., I'm sure Avalaksh will testify to this as well. Like that espresso shot sometimes at 1 a.m. really helps you get that deck to the partner the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that I wanted to ask and probably discuss, like in Melbourne, there's such a big cafe culture. Coffee is something that Melbournians are super proud of, specialty coffee, and the craft of like creating coffee in itself is something that baristas are really proud of. And there's an element to like the drink itself, which is like based on like where you source the beans from and etc. and the way you brew it, the taste is different. But I think beyond just like the drink, coffee and cafes have now become a place of culture. Like I feel like people just spend so much time in those spaces. I'm sure like, and I want to ask you this, like as a cafe owner, you probably feel quite proud of the fact that you've created these spaces where like so many memories like happen, right? Like first dates, like great business deals, I guess, like, the first startup idea gets formed. Like I'm sure Roastery probably has so many of those things. So I want to ask you this question about like, how do you see like roastery or like even when you were doing consulting, like cafes as a place of culture? Like because I'm sure it's more than just the drink, right?
So if you look at, me and if you look at Roastery, we are just, a combination of a lot of experiences that I have seen or what Roastery has seen, in our life. Probably 20 years of me being in the coffee industry is what has shaped Roastery. Coffee in India right now is still not a convenience. It's a specialty coffee that we're talking about. We do have instant coffee and we're brewing coffee at home and a very few amount of population in India, they're doing it. American culture is more of a convenience culture. Like, every corner that you walk, you need a coffee shop so you can go inside and pick a cup of coffee and then you can walk. Like the weather also allows you to do that. But if you look at the Indian weather, first of all, we don't have a lot of pedestrian where you can walk safely. Okay, so forget about picking up coffee and
Yeah.
walking on pedestrian. Yeah. Second, if you look at the weather conditions are also not great in India for you to walk and drink coffee. Yeah. So, what are the options that you have to drink coffee? Because you need that kick, you need those things. So, one option is that coffee, the office space where you're sitting and then drinking. The other option is that home that you make coffee at home and drink. And the third option is that you go out and explore. A very small amount of percentage of population in India are drinking coffee, the specialty coffee at home. Very, very few amount of people. And why they are drinking right now? Because they have experienced these coffees at some great experience space. Put together, if you look at the space that you create for coffee is still very important. Like we have not reached a level where the outlet and the space that you're creating is doesn't matter. It still matters because 95% population, the crowd, the customers that we get, they are coming because they want to have that experience. Like you make the same cup of coffee and drink at home, and you drink the same cup of coffee in our cafe. It will taste little different. It will feel little different because of the experience that is around. So that is why it is very important that you create a nice space. The space is very, very important. The location is very important. The second point, as you said about the culture, yes, I personally feel that the coffee shop are just not responsible for giving you a great cup of coffee. It is also responsible for a lot of cultural space. If you look at a lot of world's finest discussion, lot of world politics, a lot of the art, a lot of literature, everything, all these discussion used to happen at coffee shop. Another thing that I really want to say here is that if you go to Paris, or if you go to Europe, or if you go to Italy, you will see coffee shops are highly responsible for that country culture. Like you won't see a coffee shop in Paris looks like a coffee shop which is there in America, or maybe which is there in Australia, or which is there in India. They have their own code of conduct, they have their own interiors, they have their own architecture, they have their own design. Now the world has become globalized, so everybody is adopting to everyone. But in previous days, like 50 years ago, 70 years ago, when the coffee shops were built, 30 years ago, it was built keeping the local element in mind. Unfortunately, these things are still not there in India right now. Like we had those Indian coffee house, and they did very well. But eventually, if you look at, first of all, we didn't have a lot of home player. We were dominated by a lot of chain from outside India, and they came in with their own kind of thought process. This is very not a right thing to say, but if you look at the strike rate of coffee chains in India, are not that great. I mean, a lot of them has come and they failed because I feel that they kind of misunderstood how Indians work. If you look at Nestle, if you look at a lot of big brands who are not from India, but they know how to work in India. They know what Indians would like, and that is why they're very successful in India. They're more successful than a lot of other brands in India. So similarly, I felt that if I'm going to do a coffee shop, I want to bring an Indian element. I want to bring an Indian architecture. So I didn't want to copy any of the world architecture. Because India is such a beautiful country. So that's why if you look at our cafes are completely surrounded with Indian architecture. Like we use a lot of greenery. We use a lot of Indian elements in architecture: the table, chair, furniture, the lights. Everything that you see is Indian. We are serving Indian coffee. So the second thing also we did was table service in India. Like in our homes, anybody comes, we don't ask them, okay, go to the kitchen and bring some food for yourself, right? We make them sit, we just serve them water. It's that kind of culture that is there in India. And in India, if you want to make your business successful, you have to target families. If you're not targeting families, I think you're making a mistake. Yeah, because families are something that they spend a lot of money. And like people like us, we are cool, we are nice. We might go to one cafe one day, the second day some other cafe or something like that. But the families, that's where the loyalty comes. That's where you bring your build your brand. That's where the brand value increases. Down the line, let's say 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, if the Roastery Coffee House becomes a global brand, and if our interiors becomes popular, if our space becomes popular, somewhere we are making our country also proud, right? And we are responsible, like whichever city we go, whichever places we choose, we are trying to create that culture of Indianness. And that is why if you look at our brand value has a very, very, very good strike rate. People connect with us because of the unorthodox way of building coffee
At
shops that we have
cafes.
chosen.
Okay, so Nishant, I'm someone who spends a lot of time at cafes, and I'm a regular at some of my favorite cafes here in Bangalore, like Nerlu, like Paper and Pie, right? And what I often do is I'll order multiple coffees, I'll take my laptop, and I'll just do a bunch of work while just sort of sitting there and occupying a table for hours at a time. And none of my favorite cafes have ever asked me to leave. Like nobody has told me, you are spending too much time here, please go away, we need to give this
It
table to
does, for
somebody
sure.
else. Unless there has been a private event, in which case it's really not a big deal. But I feel like in Bangalore, there's an understanding that cafes provide a third space for people that don't have an office, and usually that's like creatives and founders. But I also feel like cafes here, for example, Araku, right, are the kinds of places where you can, and I have, right, often see billionaires just like sitting and chilling for hours at a time. People like Kunal Shah, people like Bhavesh, people like Mukesh Bansal, right, who are the founders of some of India's largest startups. And I personally have like talked to a lot of interesting people who have given me a lot of insight, both about my business and about life, right? Just sitting at cafes next to them, right? For example, I've met a New York Times award winning photojournalist, I've met other founders, I've met operators at top startups. And I feel like these places have been a godsend, right? For people like me in terms of inspiration, in terms of just practical infrastructure and facilities. But would you say that people like me are actually good for your business or bad for your business? And would you encourage, like, as a cafe owner, folks to become regulars who show up every day and like who sit there for a really long time and occupy a table? So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Very interesting question. Very, very interesting. You need all sort of people around you. People normally have these kind of tendency to figure out what kind of pattern you are going to do. Like, people try to fit you into the pattern. Okay, are you a Starbucks pattern or are you Tim Horton pattern? People used to ask me that what kind of customers that you want to target. And I always used to say that anybody and everybody who loves coffee. When it comes to that, the higher bill value customer or the lower bill value customer, it doesn't matter because as long as you are a customer, right? But you are coming on a daily basis, and you're spending 500 rupees in a month, you're able to spend more than 10,000-15,000 rupees with us, right? So for me, the regular customer, the repeat customer is very important. Maybe you spend 5 hours or 4 hours, it doesn't matter. What matter is there is a loyalty from your side to us. So if you are coming to a space which is not your office, and you're treating our cafe as an office space, I think it's a great thing. It's a coffee shop is always a third space. It's a space between your office and home. So you have to come every day. And I get really worried if my regulars are not coming. Like, if my, people like you doesn't come to our cafes, I get really worried. Oh, why are you not coming, man? What happened? Have you shifted to some other place? Is something wrong with our cafe? And when I started Roastery, I always made sure that I tell my team about this. And we make sure that the team goes through a lot of intense training about this, where, for example, when we go to one cafe for 30 days, you kind of become regular with them. Everybody knows you. Like, when they see the cafe is getting packed. And so they also get up and they say, "Arey, yaar, probably give me some smaller space. I don't mind standing at the counter." It's very important that you keep your regulars intact because people who are coming once in a month, they are a great customer. They are coming, spending less amount of time, giving you more value, more money. But people who are coming on a daily basis, I think those people are the most beautiful people. Without them, you can't be the brand now. And that's why, if you end up, impressing your regulars, they are the one who spread a lot of word. That's how I look at it. So obviously, you'll be having 3, 4 meetings. If there's a video call happening, you're showing a part of our cafe to somebody else there. So a lot of word of mouth happened.
Okay, Nishant. So I guess one last big question we have for you is, what challenges did you have to overcome when you were building Roastery up from scratch? Because as we understand it, right, when you set out to build an endeavor as large as this, you often face a lot of doubts. And starting any business is like a huge risk, right? But in F&B especially, where the margins are thin, where they tell you that you need to have a lot of capital to begin with, and there is so much competition and so on and so on and so on. What kinds of challenges did you predict? What unforeseen ones did you come across that you had no idea would actually become problems for you to solve? And that's what we're trying to understand. So what was that journey like for you, from going from nothing to something huge?
Obviously, over a period of time, I've now realized that. So if you have a very strong philosophy, if you have a very strong thought process of what you want to do and what you want to achieve, I think rest of the things are very, very immaterial. Like, money, anything else, because money, I feel that, it's the least important thing when you want to do something. So when I started Roastery, you won't believe I just had 2,000 rupees in my pocket. That's all. Nothing more than that. So when I wanted to start Roastery, I went and saw the space, and the space was quite nice. So I wanted to start a coffee shop which is inside the house, and then you have a backyard, and then you have a garden, and you have that entire Indian element. So I saw this house, and this was very nice, and I wanted to, pick this up, but I didn't have money. So what I did, I went to the landlord, and I said that, "Ma'am, I would need a key for a week for this house. In this whole week, I would want to bring in the government authority people and want to check with them whether, the property is good enough to open a cafe or not, because this was in a neighborhood residential area." Kind of trusted me. She gave me the key. And then I played the game. What I did, I hired a mason, told the mason that just do small work, probably removing some tiles or removing something. And then in between, I got a few of the ghost guys. These guys were the one who were kind of, giving me a boost, and they wanted to, be a part of, they wanted to invest in me and things like that. So, and obviously, in 2017, I don't see founder or investor sort of things were happening at that point of time in Hyderabad. Nobody understood the founder and the startup culture. So I brought in a lot of people there, and I told them, "See, I have taken the space, though I didn't have money in my pocket. I said, I'm opening a cafe here. Do you want to be a part of it?" And all of them agreed. This guy is starting. This dude is starting, and he's talented. He has proved himself in past. And then if we miss, then we miss this part. So that's how first Roastery was born in Hyderabad in 2017. Obviously there are challenges every day. The margins are thin for sure, and the everyday challenge, like probably I'm sitting with you right now and talking with you. Probably when I hang up, I might hear something. Something has happened in a cafe, which is like it could be a foreign particle in the food or a coffee. It could be some mishandling of the guest, or maybe some kind of issue. So the challenges every day, every hour. But the biggest challenge that I faced, that the thought process that I have right now has developed over a period of time. I mean, when I started roasting in 2017, I didn't have this thought process towards approaching in a way that okay, okay, what I'm gonna do in the next 1 month. But now, right now, I know what I'm going to do in next 10 years. So if you have the thought process, and if you work on that, and if you know that your gut feel, and see, trust me, what works for me, what will not work for you, what works for you will not work for me. Like, so there's no point taking motivation, or taking examples, or reading case studies from here and there. Just believe your instinct. Your instinct is also practice. The more you practice your instinct, the more strong it will become, and the more right it will become. Like, it will give you the right instinct. It will not misguide you. I'm still developing now, because my thought process is so strong that don't see these challenges at all. And I always tell this to everybody, that money is always second. If you have a very strong willpower and strong thought process, money will fall into place. Money is the least important thing.
That's super inspiring, Nishant. I feel like the thought process or the vision that you're talking about, when you have an opportunity to pursue that, it almost feels like play for you, right? Like you're just enjoying doing it, and that's why you're doing it. Because I guess with any amazing startup, venture, creative pursuit, when you're starting off, you're automatically like only focusing on the vision and the craft and what it can be, and you indulge yourself in it, and that's why you're in it. Pretty much, the money is not there. So
Absolutely. There's a saying also, and there's a data also to back this, that 80% of the billionaires right now are self-made billionaires. They're not come from the generational wealth, right? And if you look at these guys like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and all these big guys, they don't come from money at all. And it's just that they kept on proving themselves, because they had a very strong thought process. Like, when Elon must say to everybody that he wants to bring rocket back to the earth. I mean, this was like, changing the law of physics. So people believed in him, that, okay, this guy has a strong thought process, and I think he can do it. And that is why everybody, kind of supported him and things like that. If you try to do something good, where people will come, people will support you, you will find investors. You have to have that thing in you, that, okay, what you're doing is amazing. Trust me, that is the most challenging. That is where most of us fail. We don't know what we want to do. We are confused in ourselves, and we don't manifest right. Because, in Roastery, you ask anybody, everybody knows what they're doing and what they're going to do for the next 5-10 years.
it's been such an interesting experience speaking to you, getting this insight into like how the coffee industry is developing in India, and also like you having explained your journey about growing up in a joint family where you had sort of traverse the many games that you have to play, manage different relationships even as a kid with your cousins. Curiosity is something that you highlighted again and again as something that you hold very dearly as an attribute of yours. I feel like the people element of it and like the curiosity for people, I can just see like why you are in hospitality and why you are like a cafe owner. This childish vision that you always had, that's now fruitioning in terms of like creating this space with this roastery where you have interesting people coming into your space, and you are unlocking in some way their curiosity, right? Because I feel like personally, cafes are where curiosity gets unlocked.
Absolutely. You get to hear a lot of gossip in a cafe, and that's where a lot of
Exactly.
curiosity
Yeah,
happens.
so it's been an absolute pleasure. Lux, what do you have to say?
All right, Nishant. I think this has been an
Same here,
amazing
man. Same
episode. So thank you so much for giving us your time, and everyone. Like, we'll see you on the next episode of Art of Possible.